I think that's what's really nice about having a lot of regulars and having an open kitchen, is that we have those chats with people and say, do you think we need to be doing Saturday nights? Would you prefer to perhaps just come in for a long Saturday lunch? And we do a second sitting, and we're getting really nice positive feedback from those sort of discussions.
Hey everybody, it is Dani Valent here with you for Dirty Linen. We bring you tales from the world of food. I'm always excited about these episodes, but I'm particularly excited about this one. We've been on our journey to Barragunda for a while, for months really, which isn't exactly the same as the 5 years that the people behind the place have been on the journey. But I have so enjoyed catching up with Simone Watts along the way as she crafts, builds, energizes Barragunda Dining, a beautiful new restaurant on the Mornington Peninsula outside of Melbourne. We've been following the progress of this restaurant towards opening, but I'm thrilled to say that we are catching up with Simone now. The restaurant is alive, it is open, it is feeding people. Simone, welcome back to Dirty Linen.
Thanks so much, Dani. It's always a pleasure to chat with you. But yeah, after a month long of sort of going through the processes and finally being here, it's nice to have a little celebratory podcast together.
It's so nice. So tell us, how does it feel to have the restaurant open and welcoming guests?
It's honestly, every day is like a dream. I still pinch myself when I'm standing at the pass or opening up the door in the morning that that it's all real and that I'm there and that there's staff there and that guests are coming in. It really makes me so happy. We're all working very hard and it's very busy, but you certainly cannot complain about that after waiting this long for it.
Absolutely. Tell us tell us how people are receiving it. What are some of the things you're hearing from guests?
Look, the feedback has just been so nice, and especially I think from the local crowd that are coming, aside from the food and the hospitality stuff, like I'm really enjoying that people are connecting to the place. And, when people have come for the first time and they're leaving and they're already saying, I've got friends coming from overseas, I have to bring them there. This is the Mornington Peninsula, this is my home. I'm so proud to be here. That's the sort of feedback that's really just warming my heart, because that's always what the intention was, to celebrate the peninsula, to celebrate the back beaches of Cape Schanck, of where we are, and get people proud and excited about living down here. So, yeah, the feedback's just been really warming in that sense.
I've been really lucky to eat at Barragunda Dining twice in its short life as a restaurant that's open and taking bookings. And I've really enjoyed both experiences. They were a few weeks apart, and I think one of the most striking things was how the menu had changed in those few weeks. You've spoken a lot about how it's, reflecting the seasons. Most of the produce is grown on site. And of course, you've been in the somewhat happy and also frustrating position of being able to preserve and ferment a lot of the produce that's been grown over the past few years there. I love the sense of time that I found it through my experiences. Can you talk about that sort of the balance between the legacy of an ingredient and showing it through its different stages on the plate?
Yeah, look, the preservation side is really huge in everything that we do here, and that's because we are a big farm and we have a lot of bounty from the orchard, but also the market garden. But that preservation really is the flavour profile, I think, for a lot of the dishes. And I like the fact that you referenced time. Someone said to me early on in the piece that you can really taste the time that has gone into the dishes. And that's not like how long you took to prep it that morning. It's that, that long stretch of whether it be fermentation or pickling or what have you, has given this depth that I think is not just in flavour, it is in that physiological sort of feeling and connection to the place. And look, a lot of people often ask me how often the menu changes and, does it change, each season? And that's just, it's really not the way that Mother Nature works, nor the restaurant or the food works, because little bits and pieces are changing constantly. And, sometimes dishes don't even change in their sort of whole entirety. It's just that something new will come in and that will replace something. And, at the moment, I think the Danish is a good example that you had both situations, but one has it's gone from an almond Danish into an eggplant Danish now, and there's just a few little ingredients that have changed in that. But for me and my team, it's just a constant inspiration and joy to sort of be chatting to the farmers each week and going, oh, this is coming in and that's coming in and this we don't have anymore. And it's a lot of communication and a lot of planning. I'm actually sitting at my kitchen table with the harvest list for this week and looking at what's happening, because this time of year there's just huge changes. All of your tomatoes and the things that we love having in summer are all really starting to fade out. But then you've got all of those sort of exciting brassicas and stuff starting to pop their heads up, Jerusalem artichokes and things like that, it's very exciting times. The produce, the plant shifts, but I think also the parts of the plant that you use. And I think one of the most enjoyable things about being at the Barragunda Dining tables is to witness people's surprise when they hear the waiters talk about what's on the plate in front of them. And there are words such as sunflower marrow and radish pod, where it's like, excuse me, this is I understand some of these words, but I don't really see how they fit together. Can you talk about that sort of, I guess, would you call it a root to tip kind of approach to the plants? Yeah, look, I think when you're growing a lot of the produce yourself, and some of that is, I guess, from my farming experience as well, you really do see it in its full life cycle. And I was explaining to someone the other day, they sort of said, so the radish pod, is that like, separate to the radish plant? How does that, is it a different sort of plant that grows a pod? And, explained that it was just simply the life cycle of a radish going to seed. And before the pods dry and have that seed that would then fall into the ground and make a new radish, we pick it and preserve it. But that storytelling piece in that is really nice. But it doesn't happen unless you've got that space there to let a radish have its entire life. Most people, would have them in the ground for 30 days and pick them as the beautiful little bulb that we know and not see it become any further. But it's something when you're experimenting and playing with different things that you see a lot more. And, we do it a lot with things like, the wild fennel, different brassicas as well to get the seed pods from them. There's a lot of things that we just let go to seed purely so that we can either have the pollen or the seed or the pods outside of just the fruit itself.
How do you balance that storytelling aspect, Simone? Like, how much is this just fun as a chef? It's like another ingredient, it's another shade to the colour palette of a radish or a sunflower or a pumpkin or whatever it might be. And how much is it about saying something to diners, to prompting new thoughts or sparks in people's thinking around the environment?
It's interesting you bring that up, because we've had a lot of discussions about it since we opened, of how, without standing at a guest's table and not lecturing, but just speaking to them for, a full hour, do you really get across what we're doing on the farm, how hard people are working, the different processes, when they're still there to have an intimate dining experience themselves. And we've actually been, we're putting together a little sort of compendium style leather booklet at the moment that goes through some of our regenerative principles, what we're actually growing on the farm, how it's grown, what our philosophies are, so that people, whether it's, in between mains and dessert, or whether they want to take it home or have a look in the beginning, can read through and really understand the greater story that isn't sort of just that snippet that the waiter or waitress can have at the table in explaining what the dish is. Because, putting those, I've often said to you, putting those faces to farmers and explaining their story is such a big part of that connection to food and place.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's not a flip side, but it's another part of it. Like, how much fun are you having?
Me personally, how much fun am I having?
Yeah.
I think you can always tell how much fun I'm having. I love it. Every day, being able to look out onto the garden and see the farmers in there and watch people's smiling faces come in and out. It's really such a joy. I'm not getting as much time as I used to out in the garden. This is actually my first weekend off since we opened, and I'm spending the whole weekend in the garden. I'm so excited to get my hands dirty.
That's great. Simone, I know from chatting to you over the months and years that community is such a big part of the Barragunda project. We've had the privilege of chatting to Marie Grassett, your restaurant manager, and to Hayley Morris, who's, I suppose, the backer of the restaurant, and the Morris family has the property on which Barragunda is, well, they have Barragunda on which Barragunda is sited. She's got a series of projects that I suppose she's bringing to life partly through the restaurant. But I know there are so many other people that are part of the Barragunda picture, and that it seems to me that side of it has really developed over the years that you've been doggedly working to get the place open. Tell us about that. Where is the collective side of Barragunda at the moment?
The collective's thriving. It's really nice to see some consistency happening there for all of the farmers that are a part of it. They were so very patient along with, the restaurant team in waiting for it to actually open. But now that we are, Morning Penny Farm, Carl, for example, who grows all of our vegetables, has, consistent income coming in, and our relationship is just daily, basically, on talking and tasting and planning and sowing for seasons to come. So in many ways, those relationships have become a lot easier just due to that consistency. But then it's also really nice to, like, external from the farm, be able to be supporting friends that, I've had connections with for a long time, like the girls over at Yoki Doki Farm. We're consistently using their eggs now, and we're really excited to hopefully be one of the first restaurants that's consistently using their spent hens, which is really cool. So, they just needed that someone to put their hand up and say, okay, we can take them consistently to make it a working product for them. So they'll hopefully be hitting the menu soon. And then we've had people like the guys from Torello and Miller's in regularly for lunch, and just seeing people that have been such a big support to me over this time coming in and enjoying it is really beautiful.
What's been some of the hard things? I'm assuming it hasn't all been smooth sailing. Is there anything that's, I don't know, you've had to really work your way through that's been unexpected?
Well, it was expected, but we did sort of align opening accidentally with the wedding season, which has been a little bit challenging over the last month in juggling two venues. So we have a beautiful big heritage barn down the other end, and we run weddings in March each month. So I've actually had two teams with us the entire time this month, both in the restaurant and out the back, juggling multiple menus and a lot of produce. So my little brain is a little bit ready for a rest after that. So it's nice to just be back focusing on the restaurant. But outside of that, I think anyone in the hospitality staffing is tricky, finding that all of the right people. I think the core people in our team we have are amazing, but just finding the right casuals to fit in and how that works, and looking at really how many people we can seat and how many people we need, how that all balances at the end of the month, and whether we, need more or need to pull back. So it's just those little sort of teething and costing things that all restaurants go through when they're opening to begin with. But we've been incredibly fortunate to be booked out immediately. So it's nice when you're juggling those books with consistency in bookings. So we're very, very excited so the first of next month, we're opening bookings to June. So everyone that's been trying to get a table will have an opportunity very soon, which is exciting.
Wow, that's such a good problem to have. It's, Barragunda has been 5 years in the making, and certainly in that period, you've kept yourself pretty busy with pop-ups and other chefing gigs, and not to mention all the busy tasks that have been involved in planning and building the restaurant. But I mean, what have you noticed that's changed in the dining landscape over those 5 years? You've come back into a restaurant, you haven't had that led a restaurant like this for a number of years. Have you noticed anything different in the dining landscape?
Look, I think as a whole, the hospitality industry is really looking after their staff a lot more. I think it's the first time that, looking at a 45-hour week as being the norm for a chef was once upon a time laughable. We all 60 plus hours was just what you did. And now seeing, young families and chefs having that opportunity to come into a kitchen, be a part of a kitchen, but still go home at a reasonable hour and still have some balance is really nice. I think, especially because some of the people within the kitchen are part of the collective and looking at running sort of, their own side business. Laura, who you've spoken to a few times, she's actually about to sell her hot cross buns this week. So she'll be in the kitchen early each morning baking her hot cross buns. But, once upon a time that just wouldn't have happened. You'd be there early just starting your shift. So, yeah, sort of working together and trying to support that is a really nice thing that I've seen that's changed.
How do you make that work as a business? Is it about charging more? Is it about reframing the way you feed people? What kinds of, are there accommodations that you need to make to create this balance for people working in the restaurant?
Yeah, look, the truth is it is, as much as it is supporting staff and it's the right thing to do, it is the reason that the hospitality industry is struggling so much at the moment, because in order to make that happen, really the only way that you can do it is to increase your prices. And the general public as a whole don't particularly, like seeing menus going up all the time. But I think it has to go back to that storytelling piece of explaining to people that, we're not increasing our prices to increase our profit margins. We're increasing it to ensure that our staff are paid well and have a good life, a good work-life balance. And if you're able to pass that story on and get the general public to understand that a little bit more, the extra $5 or $10 a head, which, makes a huge difference over a year, really isn't that much to go home knowing that you've supported the chefs in the front of house and everyone else that's part of the team.
Yeah, I imagine that in terms of retaining staff, and, Barragunda Dining is a very open workspace. I suppose, the energy that's fed from the kitchen and back to the kitchen. Do you imagine that there'll be longer term benefits from running a business this way? Yeah, look, I think again, the consistency is really nice. I think it's a model that you see a lot of businesses starting to take on now, of having a smaller team and being closed a couple of days a week, closing for those 3 to 4 weeks in a year, so that everyone has the same holidays. So as a small team, you're not juggling people being away and bits and pieces like that. So the format for us at the moment feels quite nice. We're still, working out a few teething things with nights and what that looks like out here in Cape Schanck, especially over winter. But a lot of that is just communication. And I think that's what's really nice about having a lot of regulars and having an open kitchen, is that we have those chats with people and say, do you think we need to be doing Saturday nights? Would you prefer to perhaps just come in for a long Saturday lunch and we do a second sitting? And we're getting really nice positive feedback from those sort of discussions. Oh, yeah. I love a late lunch that turns into an early dinner. I feel like that is a meal that we need to add to the repertoire, especially during winter.
So here at 4:30, 5 o'clock in winter, when you've got that golden hour and the sun's coming down over the market garden, honestly, it's the most beautiful time of year.
Oh, yeah. Book me in, please. I'm wondering about winter, because I enjoyed, I reckon, every dish that I had at Barragunda, and certainly the Danish that you mentioned was one of them. But the one that I keep thinking about was that juicy, slumped tomato, just that honouring of that beautiful, just that animal, just the collapsed and giving and plump and wanting and just so luscious. I think this is two questions. One is just talk us through that tomato dish so I can have my last little taste of summer, and then tell me something you're excited about cooking in winter.
Yep. So actually the tomato dish finished up this week. So yesterday was our last day of serving the beef steak tomato. So it's
bye tomato.
we do have quite a few of the sort of smaller like tigerellas and things like that still coming through. So I'm changing up the tomato dish slightly this week and using some beautiful plum shrub and preserved plums that we did in this gorgeous prune whiskey that's going to be with some house-made Brazola and Radicchio. So playing around still with the tomato and hanging on as long as I can to summer with. And I guess that's the beauty of preserves as well. Like I think I've probably got 60 to 70 kilos of these beautiful smoked tigerellas and smaller tomatoes that will see us through for a month. And I love that way you're going into autumn, but you're still hanging on to some of those little bursts of summer flavors. It's really, really nice. But the tomato dish that you're talking about was it was a labour of love, but also incredibly simple in its process. Of we just were concussing a range of beefsteak tomatoes, some ox hearts. There were some purple Cherokees, black crims, and persimmons, so a mixture of different ones. And then we'd cure it overnight so that we sort of drew a little bit of the moisture out, and then dried them for about 8 hours the next day. And any of that juice that sort of came out of them, we reduced back down and glazed the tomato. So you were just left with, like you said, a little unctuous, sexy tomato in its almost form, but in a concentrated flavour that we just sat on some house-made smoked stracciatella with some tomato leaf oil, which you just get that sort of vibrancy of being in amongst picking tomatoes. And I love that smell when you've got that tomato leaf rubbing up against your face. And yeah, that was the idea behind that dish.
Oh, so good. And as you were talking, I did have this image of myself lying down in a field of tomato plants and just lying down to dream about tomatoes. So thank you for giving me that experience. What about winter? What's going to be good?
I'm a huge brassica lover. Like I actually, as much as I love summer, I'm always really sad at the end of winter when the broccolis and things finish up. I've just started transplanting some beautiful sugarloaf cabbages. I think it's the queen of cabbage. We've got so many in the ground this year, so there'll be everything from fermented to hitting the grill in the morning, and they're just such a versatile, sweet, delicious cabbage. We've got a lot of sprouting broccoli going in and a lot of like really interesting kale and different things happening. Those Jerusalem artichokes from Carl are about to pop up. And then, of course, pumpkins aren't too far away as well. They've sort of all just started curing. So I'm sure pumpkin will be hitting the menu in the next little while as well.
Yum. Well, I will be back maybe for one of those late Saturday arvos as the sun goes down. Simone, thank you so much for bringing us on the journey to Barragunda. I don't want to say we finished our journey. Let's keep catching up and following the story of your beautiful restaurant. But I reckon this is a celebration. Congratulations on opening the restaurant. Thank you for all the work that you've put into it and continue to do so. And big shout out to all your team. It's a really lovely, surprising, welcoming, heartening, hopeful place. And it's a great addition to our dining landscape.
Oh, thank you so much. They're beautiful words, Dani. Really appreciate your support. Thanks so much.
Pleasure. This is Dirty Linen, and I'm Dani Valent. We air the issues that the hospitality industry finds hard to talk about, hearing from different people with unique perspectives. We want to hear from you as well. If you have something that needs to be said about a topic, get in touch so we can include your perspective. Contact us at dirtylinen@deepintheweeds.com.au or hit us up on Insta at Dirty Linen Podcast. We can't wait to hear from you.
This